This NFL Week 18 Saturday night player props edition of the NFL Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com and use promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. We're also brought to you by the Hockey Gambling Podcast brand new YouTube page. The Hockey Guys are giving away a hoodie to celebrate their new YouTube channel. Register at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/HG. Welcome everyone to the NFL Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Friday, January the 5th, currently 12:08 p.m. on the East Coast. Here to get into our player props for the two Saturday night games in the NFL. We've got the two division battles. In fact, we got the AFC North battle between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. And then we've got my Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts in a very pivotal matchup. Pretty much whoever wins that matchup is headed to the playoffs more than likely. But joining me here to help me break down the Saturday night player props, I got my guy here with me from the NBA Propcast here as well. It's Chris B. Captain. Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing this Friday afternoon?
What up, Munaf? I'm excited, man. Excited, super excited. We got a lot of meaningful football and a lot of basketball to talk about a little bit later as well. But we got meaningful football, and a couple games on a Saturday before Sunday. We're bombarded with games, so it's kind of cool to when we talk about this a lot when we do NBA, but kind of cool when you can kind of isolate some of these games and do some deep diving, right? Especially with playoff implications. So excited to break it down with you, my brother. Let's do it.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's going to be two exciting games, or at least one exciting game for sure. I know there's a lot to play for the Baltimore Ravens. They've already locked up the number one seed in the AFC, and the road goes through Baltimore for the playoffs in the AFC. So definitely excited to see what transpires as a Ravens fan. But hey, Chris, obviously week 18 also means contract incentives. And I know there's been a lot of circulating on the Instagrams and the X's of the world, and people putting out what is exactly needed for a lot of these players to hit some contract bonuses. But we'll talk about it at least for both games here, and if anything does transpire here. So let's start off with the first game. We'll just go in rotation order here. And we'll talk about the contract incentive first, and then we'll kind of get into our player props from there. Or we can just take it by game. I guess we'll do that here, Chris. So first game on the Saturday afternoon card, it's going to be, like I mentioned, the AFC North battle, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are in Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Now, the only contract incentive that I did see that was meaningful in this game was going to be OBJ needing a couple of touchdowns and him needing I think some X amount of yardage. Well, that's not really going to matter in this game because he's been ruled out for this game, has OBJ. But other than that, I really didn't see any key incentives, excuse me, on the Steelers side. So just to put in perspective for Odell, he needed 185 yards for a $750,000 bonus, 5 catches for $250,000 bonus, then 2 touchdowns for a $500,000 bonus for OBJ. But again, like I mentioned, he's not going to be playing, so we won't waste time on that. But Chris, as far as contract incentives for the Steelers and the Ravens, did you see anything else that stuck out?
No, those were the biggest ones, man. I know we had talked off air yesterday about OBJ, tweeting out or Xing out. Don't look forward to me. It sounds like everything that's coming from Baltimore is that we're fine where we are. We've done our due diligence and done the job that we wanted to do, and we're gonna rest. They'll get another week of rest, and hopefully that doesn't bite them in the butt. We've seen that bite teams in the butt on the back end, but it sounds like they're just going to rest their guys, and should create some opportunities for, I think, honestly, a few more players to, to have a little bit more success. I don't know how much success is going to be warranted just because of the weather and how much that's going to impact the game. Northern Virginia and on the West Coast, on the East Coast in general, we're expected to get some weather. I think that's going to impact that game for sure. But yeah, I didn't see really anything else on the contract incentive list for either one of these teams.
All right, so let's get into our player props for this game. I know it's a very, very limited market right now, not only for these two games, but also the games on Sunday. Again, we're still in the midst of figuring out which teams are going to have their guys out there, which teams guys are sitting. We've started to see some news early come out, but again, the books have been a little bit slower. I get rightfully so this week to drop player props here. But Chris, player props for the Ravens and Steelers, man. What are you looking at?
So I know first and foremost, Mason Rudolph. Looking at Mason Rudolph, this dude is he's been balling the last couple of weeks. I went through and looked at his passing yards, and they're much higher than he's projected to this week specifically. I actually like him to go under. I kind of hinted at it already, but just looking at the first and foremost the weather, I think is going to have a tremendous impact in this game, and I also just don't think that Baltimore is going to roll over at all, right? Like this is a divisional game. Like
Yeah.
I know they're 3.5-point dogs here, but they're not going to allow Pittsburgh. Like Pittsburgh needs to win this game, and they need some help as well, of course, to be able to make the playoffs. But just going through and looking at his yards, he put up 290 2 weeks ago against Cincinnati, and then he went on the road in Seattle and put up 274 as well. His number the highest number I see right now is actually 193. So, I mean, clearly the books are telling you they expect them to kind of come back down to earth. We know Baltimore, even if they do rest some of their defensive starters, they still are really, really, they're competitive. That's what they are. When you think about the Baltimore Ravens, you think about them in the preseason, right? And everybody wanted to back them in the preseason because we know, they just have that infectious energy and that culture, right, about themselves. So I actually like Mason Rudolph for weather purposes, and just because I think Baltimore is not going to. This is a divisional game and one of the biggest divisional opponents. So I do think they'll take this game serious even without their starters being out there. And I like Mason Rudolph to go under. Like I said, the weather, just a little bit more on the weather. I was looking into this. So first and foremost, the projected wind gusts, if it's up to 40 miles per hour. Wow. So I think, and that's kind of correlated with another play I'll talk about here in a second. But Mason Rudolph, so you got the weather. You also got the wind. You also got like I said, it's going to be a sleet, snow kind of mixture. And I think that could also impact this game. So not a good game for, passing yards, or a lot of passing touchdowns in general. So give me Mason Rudolph in this first one. I'll take his under 192 and a half passing yards here in Baltimore.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, like you mentioned with the weather, and I think just familiarity with both of these teams as well, right? I know Mason Rudolph had one start against the Ravens. This was all the way back in 2019. So maybe that data is not really relevant, but in that game, he was 13 of 20, 131 yards in that game, did have one touchdown for the Steelers. But I think you're spot on. It's, again, this line is short. The total is on it's dropping. It's all the way down to 34.5 right now. Like you mentioned, the weather is going to play a significant factor in this game on Saturday between these two teams. So I couldn't talk you off of the under for Mason Rudolph. Where I look the other way, and I guess this was probably something from honorable mentions, but I think I just want to kind of discuss it with you here as well, Chris, is that I was probably looking at Tyler Huntley is getting the start here for the Baltimore Ravens. I was looking at the rushing yards to go over in this game, right? And again, because we did mention that the offense is probably going to be generated on the ground for both of these teams. We know what like the Ravens like to do offensively. They're a run first team, or they were. And also for the Pittsburgh Steelers, if Najee Harris is playing in this game, or if we're seeing Jalen Warren playing in this game. But I think Tyler Huntley is a quarterback similar to Lamar Jackson that likes to scramble. And Tyler Huntley has actually made 3 starts against the Steelers in his career. And in those 3 career games on the ground, he has games of, and I'm trying to go back to last season because I do remember watching this game. So last year, right around this time, January 9th, he had 12 attempts for 72 yards in that game. Earlier that month, back in December of 2022, 9 attempts for 31 yards. And then also earlier this year, January 1st, on New Year's Day, 2023, 7 attempts for 24 yards. So if this number is anywhere around 24 and a half, 25 and a half yards, I would be looking at Tyler Huntley to go over on his rushing yards, or even his rushing attempts. But he's had at least 7 rush attempts in each of the 3 games in his career against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's the one way I was looking at in this game here, Chris, as far as a player prop for the Ravens side.
Yeah, there's no way I could talk you off of them. If I do expect, Pittsburgh to play hard. Like we said, they still they are not quite eliminated, so you do expect them to play really really hard. In this game, and their defense has really stepped up in some spots as well. And if they're putting pressure on the quarterback, because Baltimore decides to rest a couple offensive linemen as well, just to kind of keep everybody fresh, then he could definitely feel some pressure and have to use those legs to be able to get out the pocket and make some plays. I could not talk you off taking his rushing yards over here in this spot.
What else you got for this game here, Chris?
So I like Jalen Warren. There was a couple different ways I feel like you can kind of play him. I know he is splitting that backfield, of course, but receptions was the way I chose to play him ultimately. Number is a tad bit juiced at -130. Actually, the number is actually not even out on a lot of sports books. I think I saw it on just one. So definitely shop around. You may be able to get a better line when it drops at other places. But I looked at Warren, and I'm pretty sure this is something that you saw as well, because I know how much you look at these receiving running backs, and he actually leads the receiving back. He's the leading receiving back out of that Pittsburgh backfield. He's cleared the 4 reception mark in 4 straight games, and he's a nice security blanket for Mason Rudolph in this Pittsburgh offense. So I already talked about the weather off, being a big effect of this game as well. So I do think it'll be a lot of dump down passes with those gusts of up to 40-mile-per-hour winds and the chance of sleet and freezing rain and all that stuff. I think we see a reduced. I think we just see this, reduced downfield plays and increase of Warren's ability to be able to be utilized closer to the line of scrimmage. So maybe some checkdowns to him, maybe a couple screen passes, but I expect, this to be a rock fight. You talked about the under. I went back and looked. Since the 2021 season, these teams have played 5 times. They've gone over 0 of them. So they're 5-0 to the under. We're expecting a dogfight. The average score, is 16-14. So we're talking about 30 points over the last 5 games, with all of them going over, all of them going under, and one of them was actually an overtime game as well. So I expect it to be a rock fight. Rock fight of a game, a lot of running the ball. But when it is passed, I don't expect for the wide receivers to have super big days today, which is why I like Jalen Warren to go over these 3.5 receptions here.
Yeah, Jalen Warren's been my MVP this season as far as player props go. So I couldn't talk you off of Jalen Warren for sure in this game. And again, like I think you nailed it again, that if it is going to be a passing game, it's going to be short dinking and dunking screen passes, trying to keep the defense honest, at least through the passing game as well. I think that, the guy, like you mentioned, for the Steelers as far as in their pass catching is Jalen Warren. So 100% agree with you on that. I didn't have much else for this game, and like we mentioned, it's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be a rock fight, and again, some of the props are really limited right now for these games. So, anything else you have for this game, Chris? All right, let's get over to, well, before we get over to the next game on the Saturday night schedule, let me tell everyone about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is some of the most fun I've had winning money, 25 times my money this football season. And now I can also do that for the NBA and college basketball season as well. It's pretty simple on Prize Picks. All you do is select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. Like I mentioned with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials Leagues tab. A league that's been specifically created for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So, for example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce have a projected number of 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. You can play that over on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits a game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. And Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. I have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So all you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and use code SGPN for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/SGPN using promo code SGPN. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And we're also brought to you by the Hockey Gambling Podcast hoodie giveaway. The Hockey Gambling Podcast just launched their new YouTube channel, giving away a Hockey Gambling Podcast hoodie to celebrate. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/HGP to enter. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/HGP. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here, my man. The next game on the Saturday night schedule, that is going to be the Houston Texans. They are in Indianapolis to take on the Colts in this game, and this game has big playoff implications as well. Obviously, we talked about it at the top of the episode that pretty much the winner of this game is more than likely headed to the playoffs. Also, whichever team does win this game, and if Jacksonville lose their game, the winner of this game may just end up being the AFC South Division champion as well. So keep that in mind when you are, looking at betting in this game for the side total. But more importantly, for player props, we'll start here with the contract incentives. So there's two for this game, both on the Texans side, and the secret is out about Dalton Schultz, who needs 4 receptions for a $250,000 bonus, and he needs 6 catches for a $500,000 bonus. Now, Chris, I'm going to say this because, like I said, that the secret is out about Dalton Schultz. When you see sports books reporting that 99% of the money is on Dalton Schultz to go over 4.5 receptions, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure you agree with me. That's a huge red flag for me. And then I'll mention the second one here. I think this one makes a little bit more sense to me is the Texans running back Devin Singletary. He needs 84 total yards to get to 1,200 scrimmage yards for the season, and that'll unlock a $250,000 bonus for him in this game. If this wasn't a playoff game, essentially, Chris, that I would say, hey, maybe get on the Dalton Schultz prop. But I don't think that the Texans are going to be forcing the ball to Dalton Schultz to get him his contract incentive bonus here. Look, it could happen, but I'm not going to be playing it because number one, everybody is all over. The sportsbook are talking about how 99% of the money is on the overs for Dalton Schultz, and also it being pretty much a playoff game for the Texans, and that they're going out obviously to win this game here. So do you have any thoughts on that before we talk about the player props in this game, about Dalton Schultz and his contract incentive?
I think you nailed it. Like while we would love to, is that plus money. The books aren't idiots. They set these lines accordingly. I couldn't, and I do expect this to be a really high scoring game. I think this is one of the better. This is definitely the better game for props if you're looking to take overs, just because it's a controlled environment. We know that the Colts play inside a dome, but the playoff part, like you mentioned, and like I said, I'll be quick, but like DeMeco Ryans is not. He doesn't care. he has no care at all, because when we're thinking about DeMeco Ryans and his accolades, they're not going to say, oh yeah, Dalton Schultz got 200, got 5 catches in that last game. So that's not tied to DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans wants to win football games, so no matter how they need to do it, I think it's going to be done. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate that point that, I wouldn't be there on Dalton Schultz. You look at his targets, even the handicap, like you look at his targets, they have gone up. Of course, you guys are missing Tank Dell. But still plenty of other receivers on this football team, and I think you guys are going to use a balanced attack as well. So, I'm not there on Dalton Schultz. Devin Singletary maybe a little bit better option, but not Dalton Schultz. Receivers catching tight ends catching 5 passes it's a lot sometimes, even for Kelsey, and he's one of the better wide receivers.
Yeah, and I will say this: Noah Brown is going to be inactive for this game for the Texans. So again, like I mentioned, there is a world of possibility that Dalton Schultz does get there just because of the lack of receivers and playmakers available for the Texans in this game, especially at the wide receiver position. But keep that in mind that, again, the secret is out about Dalton Schultz in this game, that again he needs 4 catches for him to get to that contract incentive bonus. Right now, that number is priced at 4.5. At plus odds. So again, like Chris mentioned, that these books are not dummies. They know what is going on. Chris, I'll actually start it off here. I'm actually going to get behind Devin Singletary, but just because he is a running back, and the Texans with Devin Singletary have found some success him at the running back position. Dameon Pierce hasn't really panned out for this Texans team as far as coming out of the backfield, but we've seen teams, we've seen Devin Singletary actually have pretty good games for this Texans team all throughout the season. And also, if you go back and look at the snap counts for Devin Singletary, and the percentage of snap counts he's taken, he's by far at 60+% over some of the other depth wide receivers, the running backs that we do have for this Texans running back room. Last week, 16 attempts, 80 rushing yards against the Titans. He had 9 for 44 against the Cleveland Browns, 26 for 121 against the Tennessee Titans again. Over the last 5 games, he's had 72 attempts for 346 rushing yards. That's 4.8 yards per carry for Devin Singletary. And we also take a look at what the Colts are giving up to that running back position. These two teams did match up in week 2. Not a lot of success for the running backs of the Texans because Dameon Pierce got the bulk of the carries, and he finished that game with 15 carries for 31 yards. But over the past couple of weeks here, so I'll quickly read this off, what the Colts have allowed to the to the running back position. Back in week 13 against the Titans, Derrick Henry ran for 21 carries, 102 yards in that game. Tajay Spears as well for the Titans, 16 carries, 75 yards. Against the Bengals, Joe Mixon, 21 for 79. Against the Steelers, Jalen Warren, 10 for 40. Najee Harris, 12 for 33. The Atlanta Falcons, Tyler Algier, 9 for 69. Bijan Robinson, 12 for 72. Cordell Patterson, 7 for 26. And last week, against the Raiders running back, Zamir White's 20 carries for 71 yards. So right now, the number for Devin Singletary in this game is sitting at 63.5. I would also take a look at his rush attempts to go over in this game as well, because again, he's been the better running back for this Texans team. And putting the contract aside, I think when you're in a game here, you're going to want to establish the run as well, right? And I think that Devin Singletary, whether you want to play his receiving yards and rushing yards to go over, that number's at, I believe, 84.5, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check it here. But I am going to be on Devin Singletary in this game here, Chris.
Yeah, that was excellent. That was excellent. Me as well. I like the rushing yards a little bit more than the attempts, but I just feel like so let me start by saying this. The Colts have been an over team. Their defense is just not that great this year. 11-5 to the over is the highest percentage of overs. So we're looking at the Washington Wizards here, of the NFL. But taking a deeper look, and it's correlated to another player prop as well. 7-1 to the over at home, So when they're at home in that dome, there's a a shootout waiting to happen. And with CJ playing as well as he has, kind of getting him back and being able to have a more balanced attack. I love that, CJ just comes back and you guys still kind of keep that run established with your Texas, because he ran for 16 carries last week for 80 yards. So why would you mess that up, this week, especially in a very, very meaningful game? I think you do whatever you have to do. And I think that, D'Amico Ryans and this offensive, all of the offensive coaches and offensive coordinators, probably think, if they're thinking like I'm thinking, they're thinking that, Devin Singletary having the ball in his hands is better. You guys' offense is better than him not having the ball in his hands. So while I think CJ still plays well, I do like I like Devin Singletary as well. So I play this rushing yards over here in this spot.
All right, what else you got for this game here, Chris?
So same thing. I talked about the shootout. Like I said, 7-1 to the over, 11-5 on the season. CJ Stroud, I like your boy, him, his passing yards, 256.5. Definitely shop around because I did see the number go up just a tad bit, but he missed a couple weeks, of course. He was out with injury, but then last week he kind of came back and got a chance to kind of shake off some of that rush. The game was over with at halftime last week. You guys smashed the Tennessee Titans just last week, 26-3 in that blowout. So they didn't really need him much, and he didn't go over. But going back, to let's go back, just a few games ago before his 2 most recent games. This was a number that CJ was getting pretty consistently. He had passed for 257 or more yards in 5 straight games. And this game, like I said, it's going to be played in a dome. We're not worried about weather at all. It's not going to be a drop of rain in there. And to me, CJ just seems like he performs best in those really big moments. So I'm gonna lay the number right here with CJ, and take his over 257 or more passing yards here. Like I said, I think the game could be a shootout. Gardner Minshew and those guys are and Pittman are not going to just roll over. Last week, Aiden O'Connell, I know we talked about him.
Yeah.
He threw for 299 yards against this defense, and then a few weeks before that, when they faced another competent quarterback, it was Jake Browning who went off for 275. So I like CJ in this spot. If I think he could have another really, really big game. So give me CJ to go over his 256.5 passing yards here.
Yeah, I mean, look, no disrespect to Aiden O'Connell, but when he's 30 of 47 for 299 yards against his Colts team, I'm very interested to see what CJ Stroud is going to do in this game here as well. So yeah, I definitely can get behind this. I'm not sure if CJ Stroud did play in the game earlier this season against the Colts. I want to see what he did in that game. I think that was a second game. Um, against the Colts in that game. 30 of 47, 384 yards passing in that game for CJ Stroud against the Colts. So, yeah, I can definitely get behind this one as well. I was also on CJ Stroud. I'm going to join you on that passing yards. I just took his attempts over as well. Quarterbacks have been able to throw the football against him. Again, if we're expecting this to be a shootout and a little bit of back and forth, I think that we will see CJ Stroud get over this number of the pass attempts in this game. So, definitely can get behind that here as well. Chris, you have any other player props for this game?
Now, those were the two main ones I like. It's difficult, if I was trying to really wanted to get there with a wide receiver just for for the connection piece from CJ Stroud, but I think I'm gonna stay off and just root for CJ specifically in this one, no matter where he goes with the ball. I like CJ a lot.
Yeah, I was thinking about Nico Collins in this spot, but I mean it makes a lot of sense, right? If we do like the passing yards over for CJ Stroud in this game, that I think that ball is going to go to Nico Collins in this game. And against the Colts earlier this year, he went off 7 receptions, 146 yards receiving for Nico Collins in that game against the Colts. So I think that's probably a little bit of correlation that if we do like the over for CJ Stroud, that it's going to go to Nico Collins in this game. All right, Chris. That is the 2 games for Saturday. We kind of went through the contract incentives, gave out a couple of player props that we do like that are ones that are available right now for the Saturday games. Do you have any honorable mentions before we get to our best bets and our prize picks entry?
Man, when I guess I just kind of want to get your input on this. I was looking at Michael Pittman, and we haven't really talked about Michael Pittman a lot on the show, but I think it might have been Rod that brought him up a couple weeks ago. And his reception prop is 7.5. That number is really, really high. I know the Texans don't have the greatest pass defense, and I know he also, just kind of going back and I did the research. He did have 8 receptions against you guys on 12 targets in week 2 of the season. But I just feel like you guys knowing what's coming, right? Like I just kind of feel like he's also kind of, just not performed well recently. I mean, he's only gotten his back-to-back weeks against Pittsburgh and against the Raiders where he didn't go over this number. And his targets have actually decreased. So I was potentially thinking about going under. It is a tad bit juice. I think it's like minus 148. But number probably is kind of spot on. So I wanted your thoughts on that one, but nothing else outside of Michael Pittman.
Yeah, I think for Michael Pittman Jr., like he is obviously, there's no question, their number 1 wide receiver, right? And he's going to get the targets, but I think the Texans might just kind of game plan and be like, hey, maybe throw, shade the safety over to Michael Pittman's side and then, make somebody else beat us. And I went back and kind of looked at what Jonathan Taylor has done against his Texans team. And he's had a lot of success on the ground against the Texans. He didn't play in the game earlier this season. And I'm not going to put any stock into what Jonathan Taylor has done in the past against his Texans team because this rush defense for the Texans over the past several seasons, excluding this year, was by far the worst in the National Football League. I mean, everybody was running all over them, but this season they have tremendously improved under DeMeco Ryans. So I think the one thing that kind of intrigued me and maybe a pivot away from Michael Pittman Jr. is probably maybe taking a look at Jonathan Taylor's receptions to go over something similar to Jaylen Warren that we talked about. Because you take a look at what he's done as far as catching the football against the Texans, 3, 4, 1, 0, 4 receptions. And then we kind of just going to go through his game log I know that he hasn't really gotten a lot of receptions over the last 4 weeks here, but I think that if the Texans are going to shut down and limit the running attack of the uh, Indianapolis Colts, and they're gonna make somebody else beat them and covering Michael Pittman Jr. because Derek Stingley Jr. has been playing really well. I think he's gonna do a great job of Michael Pittman Jr. So I think that a pivot might just be a Jonathan Taylor receptions prop or his receiving yards to go over in this game. That's kind of what I was thinking. But I agree with you that I think that number it's 7.5 for a reason, just because we know he gets the targets and he's done the receptions more times than not only this season, but throughout his career. But he's also only averaging about, I think, what, 5 receptions per game against the Texans in his career. Let me double check that and see what he's done. I know you mentioned he did it earlier this season, but outside of that, I don't think he's had a lot of success against the Texans team as far as receptions go. And again, when we talk about division opponents, you're kind of familiar with what the tendencies are of your division opponent. So he's only had 2 games in his career in 7 games where he's gone over 7.5 receptions here, Chris.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, but I just feel like you got to be locked in and focused, to be able to get this win and execute the game plan. And the game plan, I mean, it's pretty simple. You got to find a way to slow down Michael Pittman. So I wanted to get there on the under, but didn't quite get there. I think I'll enjoy CJ a little bit more, and kind of stay off of this one here.
All right, let's put together our price picks entry for the Saturday games here, Chris. Let's see here. Let me get over to prizepicks.com. Again, make sure you use that promo code SGPN on your first deposit. You'll get a deposit bonus of up to $100 and use promo code SGPN. So we're both in agreement about CJ Stroud on his passing yards. So I'll go ahead and put the more than 260.5 passing yards. That's what the number right now is for CJ Stroud over on Price Picks. I also do like the Jalen Warren one that you mentioned. Let me see if they have that out yet here. No, not yet for Jalen Warren. I do see Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Michael Pittman. I know we both like Devin Singletary, so we'll go more than that on his rushing yards. That number's at 63.5. Anything else, Chris, that we want to throw in here? Maybe something from the Steelers and the Ravens game. Oh, you said Mason Rudolph, right?
Yeah, Mason Rudolph under on his passing yards. What number do you see? Is it 190?
It's 191.5.
Yeah, 191.5. I like him to go under. Like I said, weather's going to be a big factor too.
Yeah, they have Tyler Huntley 161.5 as well. I kind of like the under. Oh, sorry, the less than that on that as well. But
yeah, I think it's going to be an ugly rock fight of a game. Yeah. Rocks and snow, and wind blowing everywhere.
Yeah, so we'll throw in Mason Rudolph in there for this entry. So, all right, we're going to go CJ Stroud, more than 260.5 passing yards. Devin Singletary, more than 63.5 rushing yards. And then we'll go Mason Rudolph, less than 191.5 passing yards. That $100 entry will get you a nice return on the power play to go 3 for 3 of $500. Again, make sure you go to prizepicks.com and use our promo code SGPN. You'll get that first deposit bonus of up to $100. All right, Chris, let's throw in our best bets here before we wrap up this episode for the Saturday games here. What's your best bet for the Saturday game?
I'm going CJ. I'm excited for this game, man. Like I said, in the dome, CJ has this wow factor about him, and he's had it all year. I love that he got a chance to knock the cobwebs off last week, and I love CJ to just to kind of sling that thing around, man. I mentioned it, but I'll re-mention it. Colts are 11-5 to the over this season. This defense has not been great. The Gardner Minshew continues to put up pretty big numbers as well. So I do think CJ will, I don't see a blowout happening at all, which is why I mentioned that. And then 7-1 to the over when they're playing in Indy as well. So tons of points, tons of yards. I think this is the over game for the props, and I like CJ more than anything here. So give me him to go over his 256.5, or wherever you can get the best number at here.
Yeah, no argument for me on that for CJ Stroud. Curious to see what his passing touchdowns number was in this game. 1.5 at minus 105. I think I'm gonna take that, man. I'm gonna take that.
Go ahead and put I'll go with you too. I'll take that with you.
Because if we're expecting this to be a shootout, and I know we talked a lot about Devin Singletary, and he should have success on the ground here against the Colts as well, but I think this number is 1.5 because the 2 prior games before the concussion protocol he was in, he didn't have again against the Jets, but that was in New York against the Jets, where the Jets are a pretty good passing defense, and then against the Denver Broncos, which was essentially at that time for both those teams was a playoff game, because both in the standings at that time, back on December 3rd, both the Denver Broncos and the Texans were, I think, tied in the standings. And pretty much whoever would have won that game would have gone to the playoffs. But like we mentioned, he had a great game this earlier this season against this Colts team, 30 of 47, 384 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in that game. And he's had, again, multiple games this season where he's had at least 2 passing touchdowns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the, that would make it 7 of the 15 games he's played this season that he's gotten at least 2 passing touchdowns. And again, like Chris mentioned multiple times, and again, 100% agree that when you're playing in Indy in the Dome this season, it's just turned into a shootout between those 2 teams. So I think CJ Stroud can definitely get 2 passing touchdowns here. So I'm going to take CJ Stroud over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That's minus 105 right now, currently over on DraftKings. All right, Chris, that's going to wrap it up, my friend, for this Propcast. Nice, short and sweet for the NFL Week 18 Saturday night games for our player props, and talking some contract incentives as well. Anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
Nah, that's it, man. Just, going along with what you're saying, going back to, I got Aiden O'Connell threw for 2 passing touchdowns last week against this defense as well. So, yeah, but no, that's it, man. Enjoy the games, everyone. Bet responsibly, of course. And, it's good to get meaningful football. So, just enjoy the games, man. Definitely, check me out on Twitter or X at Crispy Captain, 2 P's, 2 N's. Like I said, enjoy the games, everyone.
Yeah, man. Last weekend of the NFL regular season, like Chris mentioned, meaningful football on Saturday, and obviously a lot of games on Sunday as well. Rod and myself will do the Sunday games later this afternoon, so tune us with us then. Then right as soon as we're done here for watching us live, Chris and I, we're going to go over to the NBA Propcast as well, do our player props for the Friday night cards. So join us there as well. Make sure to follow Chris on X. That's at Crispy Captain, 2 P's, 2 N's. You can follow me on X at SportsNerd824. Again, like Chris mentioned, enjoy the games this weekend, last weekend of the NFL regular season football. We'll talk to you guys down the road. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.